Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Legendarium podcast. This is Craig, your, lovely and talented host for the day. If we're just considering other panelists, then I'm flying solo today. Luckily, I'm not actually flying solo because I have with me today James Kennedy, the author of forthcoming or a recently published book,
Recently published,
Dare to Know. I've heard it described as a metaphysical brain bender. James, so James has requested that I hold off on the insult, and we're going to do it at the end of the episode. I'll see if I can come up with a decent insult for you as I get to know you over the course of the episode. So people can look forward to that. You know what I'll do? I'll intro when we get to where we talk a little bit about your book at the end of the episode. I'll insult either you or your book. I don't know. One of the two.
Okay. Yeah, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write down what I think your insult is going to be right now, and then we're going to see how accurate I am. So all right. I'm writing it down right now. Hold on.
This feels like a game show. It's like the Newlywed Game. You're going to hold up the card, and we'll see if we're right. Those listening on the podcast, you'll just have to take our word for it. He is actually writing something down.
Okay. So here is a paper.
Okay.
Right? You see it? I'm going to make a design on it there. So it's that paper. All right. Good.
So, James, you are here today to get into a specific topic with me. And after we talk about this topic, we're going to get into your book, and we'll talk about what you just published. But the topic is predestination in sci-fi fantasy literature, or I think just media generally, right? In speculative fiction of whatever type. So predestination is a recurring bugaboo of mine, right? We talk about this just because it's I don't know, it comes up a lot, or it seems to come up a lot in the books and movies and whatnot that I really enjoy. So it's an interesting topic to me. So before we get into it, of course, everybody should go to thelegendarium.com, support the show by clicking on the Patreon link, go check us out on Discord, join in the conversation, and also go check out James's books. What's your website, James?
JamesKennedy.com, and the books are Dare to Know, which is the newest one, and The Order of Oddfish, which is YA fantasy from a couple years ago.
Okay, all right. So, yes, please do go check those out, and I'll put those in the show notes. Now, predestination. Before we get into this, like I was saying, this is a pet topic of mine for a while now. It goes back a few years. What is predestination? Can you give us a good working definition for this conversation?
Let's see. The elect whom God has chosen will go to heaven, and all else will be damned. Oh wait, you want something other than the Calvinist definition?
You went straight Calvinist. So I'm thinking more like like physics based.
So predestination. So the future is fixed. If given, I guess in terms of physics, you'd call it determinism. If given a number of laws and given a complete knowledge of where everything is in the universe and how fast it's going or whatever, you can precisely calculate where everything is going to be in the future. And so the future is fixed. Or there's a relativity version of it called the block universe, which because the speed of light is fixed, that means that that the future. I mean, it's a complicated physics argument, but that means that the universe is just a block that can't change. I'm not going to go into it.
No,
I was a physics and philosophy major in college. There's a lot of good science. There's a lot of good accounts of the block universe. People can look it up. But yes, that's another. So it doesn't just have to be Newtonian physics. It can also be relativistic physics.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so basically what you're telling me is that in the next 30 to 45 minutes, you are going to break my brain. That's I'm really looking forward to it. Really, really, James.
Well, it never has it been said with less relish. I'm really looking forward to it. Really, really.
So it's predestination in whether you want to do it in religious terms or physical terms. predestination is the kind of the opposite of the concept of free will.
Yeah, something in the future has to happen.
Right.
No matter what.
No matter what you do, no matter what choice you think you're making, this thing will happen. And it gets down to, I mean, you like we're talking about physics, you can get down to the molecular level, like you say. If you can, with perfect accuracy, understand the what'd you say, the velocity of all things?
Well, yeah. Oh, wow, that's a nice book title. If you know the state of the universe at one point, you know all the rules that govern it, and you can trust those rules, and you can trust that knowledge that you can calculate what the state of the universe is going to be at some future time. Now, quantum mechanics is different because that is statistical and not they're totally deterministic. But let's leave that aside for now.
Okay, so now that we've got something of an understanding of what it is, how does this figure into fiction? We're talking about this vis-a-vis speculative fiction, and I've got some titles, some books, some shows, movies in mind that I either like or hate with this concept. But why don't I turn you loose on this?
I absolutely have something to say about this, but before I do, I want to know why you called it your bugaboo.
Just because it really does mess with me. It's okay. I'll give you an example then. A couple of years ago, I wrote an article for a national magazine that was a review of devs. And I wrote the article, I wrote the review not because I do a lot of reviews for national magazines, but because I had a buddy there, and Jack Butler, I guess listeners know Jack Butler from the show. He's been on a few times. And I wrote him and I said, hey, I just watched Devs on Hulu. So this was, a couple of years ago at this point. I just watched Devs on Hulu and I can't, it was one of those itchy fingers kind of things. Like I couldn't rest, I couldn't sleep until I wrote something down. And so so what I ended up writing was basically, everything that we know seems to point toward determinism, that, everything is predetermined, everything is predestined. Everything we know about physics, well, I don't know, maybe quantum physics aside, but everything we seem to know about physics points toward this. And yet it's a horrible way to live one's life, as though you have no choice, as though, these things must happen. It's kind of, it feels icky, even if it might be true.
Right?
Yes.
It's anti-storytelling because stories are all about choices that people make, right? And if everything is predetermined, there's not much of a story. So if people have watched Devs, and I highly encourage everybody to do so, it's an amazing show. But that is kind of the whole crux of the show is, do any of these characters have a choice in what they're doing? Or are we simply on the tram lines of history barreling toward some inevitable conclusion, right? So it's not so much that you dislike predestination as a plot device. It's that you just don't like how it makes you feel philosophically.
That's true. That's true. Although I should say it does feel like, if we're talking about it as a plot device, it can be very cop-outy. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, sure, cop-outy. It can be. The great example from this show, people, longtime listeners who've heard us talk for years and years will remember the Wheel of Time. This comes up a lot in the Wheel of Time, and it's like, well, so why did this happen? Well, Taviran, because it had to, because it was kind of predetermined, and that always bugged me a little bit. But anyway, yeah, go on.
Well, okay, so here's my take on predestination. I think there's it narratively, not philosophically, but in terms of stories, I think there's 4 types that I can identify. There's durable predestination, fragile predestination, volitional predestination, and broken predestination.
Oh my.
I think these are 4 ways that stories can approach it in a fruitful way. So the durable one is the classic one, and it kind of goes all the way back to Oedipus, right? Like Oedipus is told, hey, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to do all these things to keep that from happening. And then it ends up happening. Like, there's nothing that could, you know about Oedipus.
Sure.
There's a classic Twilight Zone episode. A man travels back in time knowing there's going to be a fire at this one place. He goes to, stop the fire, and he knocks over the lantern, and that causes the fire. right? So it's like the character, here's what's going to happen. They take steps to keep it from happening, and it is those very steps that cause the thing to happen. I think it's a classic, almost like golden age of science fiction way to approach it. And there's kind of like a essential powerlessness to this, right? And it kind of gives irony, but it's kind of like a cheap irony, right? Like it's kind of like once you've heard the joke, you kind of get it. So like, and it's even like, so when Arthur Dent and Ford Prefect like travel back to Earth, in Life, the Universe, and Everything, or the end of Restaurant at the End of the Universe, to Earth's prehistory, they realize, oh, we're the ones who displaced the Earthlings who were originally here, and we're the ones who kind of messed up Earth, and it was always going to be this way. And so I guess the subset of this is the thing that happens just as it was prophesized, but just not in the way you expected. So like they said, Anakin Skywalker, oh, you're supposed to bring balance to the Force. Well, he eventually does.
Just not in the way that, not what they thought.
Yeah. So, and so that you can get like irony there. Yeah, first he turns into Darth Vader and he does all these awful things, and then finally he throws the Emperor down a hole, and then he brings balance to the Force.
What?
Let's just pretend that the sequels did not exist.
No. I was actually going to go back to the prequels. No, because I always read that as the Jedi were idiots. They thought they understood the prophecy, and the prophecy was that the dark and light were not in balance, and he goes about murdering the whole light side of the Force, so that they're in balance.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just another way of like the same point. Like it gets balanced, just not in the way you thought. Yeah, right. Every single Jedi gets killed except for like Luke is hanging out, and that's it. But yeah, balance. And so in both cases, no matter what, the future is set. But to make a good story, maybe it comes true in an unexpected or ironic way.
Okay.
And so that's durable, and then fragile. So do you have like? Do you want to chime in on that, or should I just go on to the next
go. Yeah, I'm actually very interested in what fragile would be.
So fragile is only by people keeping ignorant of what will happen, will it happen. So this is like the foundation novels of Isaac Asimov. Harry Seldon makes up the science of psychohistory. It's true broadly for many people, but it's not. It doesn't take into account individuals doing things, because by and large, history is made by large historical forces, not people. And but it's crucial that that Harry Seldon does not leave the first foundation any knowledge of psychohistory itself, the very science that is guiding them, because they can't. If they know what they're going to be doing, then they would change what they were doing, and then they would not follow his plan. And so that's when like the mule comes along in Foundation and Empire, and he's just one guy that disrupts the plan. And then you have the second foundation comes in, and they kind of like manage the first foundation to keep them ignorant of the plan. That's the only way the plan is going to work, is if they don't know what the plan is.
Okay, so it's a Schrodinger's determinism. I don't know, yes. Something like that.
You also have it in the Golden Compass, his Dark Materials. Lyra has to act without knowledge. Like Council Lancilius is talking to Farder Coram at the council, and he says like, oh, the witches have talked about this child for centuries past, talking about Lyra, but she must fulfill this destiny in ignorance of what she is doing, because only in her ignorance can we be saved. So it's fragile, like it's predestined, but things can go wrong, and people have to be ignorant for it to work. And I think this is different than durable. Right?
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in durable, there is nothing that can change it. It is going to happen. End of story. In fragile determinism, then it's what's the observational paradox? I can't remember the name of it. Like if you observe something, you change it.
Uncertainty
there
principle.
You go. The uncertainty principle.
Yeah.
That by observing it, you change it. Is that kind of along those lines?
Yeah. And I guess a subset of a fragile predestination is maybe kind of not 100% certain predestination, like Minority Report. You got 3 precogs.
Right.
Every once in a while, one of them will disagree. That's the Minority Report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I have to say, I don't know if you've done an episode about this, but I feel that and I don't know if I'm saying something that will get people mad at me, but I think the Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg movie version is a better story than the original Philip K. Dick.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about Total Recall. The Arnold Schwarzenegger version, it's better than the original short story. They cleaned it up. It's a better story.
Yeah.
I love Philip K. Dick. But okay, Tom Cruise's Anderton character says like, I'm not going to murder this person. Like they've got me pinned for a murder, but I didn't do it. I'm going to get the Minority Report. But then when he gets to the actual point of where he's going to, you've seen Minority Report, right? Yeah, he's in where he's at the point where they have seen the future. He said, "Oh my God, I am going to kill this guy," and that like he kind of assents to this future, right? Although
Okay.
he doesn't end up killing him,
Right.
but like him shooting at the guy does happen just as it was predicted. And then the rest of the story kind of cleans up and does other things and gets to broader issues. But that brings me to the third kind of, which is volitional predestination.
Okay.
You're confronted with this predestination and you actively assent to it. And this is like arrival.
So
Um,
is this functionally different than the other two? Like this would be durable. It's just that there is
I'm talking
there's
narratively.
narratively. Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah. So, so when I say narratively, I mean like how do
Sure.
people emotionally react to it, and how do the characters change their behavior
Got it.
based on what's going on? And so, so volitional does not usually go for cheap irony. It kind of goes back to so Nietzsche has that idea of eternal recurrence. He's like, okay, if there's like limited matter in this universe and limited space, then every combination of matter must have happened before an infinite number of times. It's going to happen again an infinite number of times in the future. Therefore, everything that you do, you've done countless times before, and you will do countless times again. And what Nietzsche, and this is an old thing going back to the Greeks, but Nietzsche, what he said is like, and the mark of somebody who's great is that they assent to it actively. They said, yes, I'm living the kind of life that this is what I want, and I mean, this is like a really vulgarized version of what he was saying, but to have the strength of spirit to say, I actively assent to what I'm doing that I've done it a million times before, and I will do it a million times again.
Okay.
And so that's kind of what Arrival is, which is based on that Ted Chiang short story, The Story of Your Life, which is like Louise, the main character. She once she begins to speak the language of the aliens, she becomes kind of functionally omniscient. She knows her entire timeline. She knows that the daughter that she's going to have is going to die very young. And she knows that if she gets together with the Jeremy Renner character, she's going to have this daughter, and she
She does
actively
it anyway.
assents to it.
Yeah.
And that's volitional. And so I think that I know I'm going to get my heart broken, and I'm going for it anyway. And so I think that is a very deep version. I'm kind of going from less deep to more deep as I go on. And I think the best one is broken predestination, which is the very concept of predestination gets destroyed by the actions of the story. And it's a symptom of a breakdown of a larger system. Isaac Asimov has a book that's I don't know if many people read it right now, called The End of Eternity,
I don't know that one.
which is about a kind of a company that their job is to go around in history and kind of tidy things up, and keep everything such that their company will end up existing. I read this a long time ago, but then the one guy for love, decides to kind of like break the law because he realizes that this woman that he loves is going to, have to be snuffed out for the company. And so I don't remember everything exactly that happens, but the actions of the story lead to the company Eternity being destroyed, and like humanity is kind of freed, and like now people like have freedom. It's kind of like that the one ending of His Dark Materials. Like it seems that like what the church wants and the magisterium wants in that book is that like, oh, we're going to get rid of Justin, everybody's just to become a deterministic automaton, and that's what they want. And Lyra's actions free everybody and kind of destroy determinism. That's one of the reasons why it's a great ending for me. Frankly, my latest book, Dare to Know, has broken predestination in it.
Yeah.
How convenient for me. The premise of it is that there's a company that can tell you exactly the time and date that you're going to die. The main character is this salesman who works for the company. There's just one rule: you can't look yourself up. His life is not going very well. One day he does look, in a fit of desperation, he does look himself up, and he finds out that he had died 26 minutes ago. The algorithm never fails, so why does it fail only for him? That sets off this journey of like across America and through his own memories to find out why this seemingly invincible math only fails for him. And so that's another way. Some kind of system is breaking down, whether it's the End of Eternity or His Dark Materials or Dare to Know, in which a new thing is being born that makes nonsense of predestination.
So when you write or read, for that matter, when you come across predestination as a narrative device,
Uh-huh.
do you I don't know. Does it? Oh gosh, I lost my question. I had a really really good. It was very deep. It was a very deep question. No, do you when you come across these things, how do you feel like it can be used as a cop out? What's the difference between it being a cop out versus it being an interesting storytelling device? Does it have to have an allegorical, something to say, or
No, I think this is it. If the concept of predestination is just uh, is not interrogated, then it's a cop out. If like the something is predestined and then the action of the story is about predestination, then I think it's interesting. If it's just like, oh, there is if it there's a prophecy that you're going to be the chosen one, you're going to defeat the wizard. Oh, it turns out it's true. Great.
right?
Like that doesn't grapple with the idea of predestination itself, and so that doesn't have depth, right?
Right.
Because I think once you bring out that queen in your narrative chess game, you have to play it, right? It's too big of an idea not to immediately crowd out almost every other idea, including like good and evil.
Yeah, no, this is what I was getting at this in my review of Devs as well, where a lot of people have heard of this concept. Every once in a while we talk about this idea of determinism, but we tend not to examine it very closely because of just how big that question is. I mean, it's exactly like you said. It comes down to if you believe that everything is determined in your what you call it. I mean, I know you're speaking in narrative terms, but if everything is durably predetermined, then LOL, nothing matters. Is there a God? Doesn't matter. Where did I come from?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. What is good and evil? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, because we're in a machine,
exactly.
in which it doesn't matter what we think.
And so if you look at it too closely, it's like the sun. It's gonna burn out your retinas, and you can't see anything else, for the rest of your life. And so we tend not to dig in too deep. And I know I count myself among that. Like I said, I feel like it's no way to live my life feeling like I have no control over it. So functionally, I have to act like free will is the thing, even if perhaps it's not.
Yeah, and I like we don't know everything about physics, and there's a lot about, I mean, especially quantum physics that is statistical, which means it's not predictable, or at least like not in terms of the physics that we have. And so there's room for undeterministic, unpredestined things to happen, at least on a quantum level. But I think, yeah, I don't. In terms of like what I want to know. And how would I live my life? That was one of the things I had to grapple with in Dare to Know. Okay, somebody goes and they find out their death date. What? And let's say it's 40 years from now. What do you do if you're a smartass? You go point a gun to your head right now, and you fire it and see what happens.
Right.
And as an author, if you're going to have an outrageous premise like that, you have to grapple with it. And so I made up this idea that people who try to mess with the math, they feel like the gun inevitably jams. You inevitably throw up all those pills that you had taken. And then you realize that you never had free will, but you only realize it then, and you feel like your entire at that from that point onward, you're kind of like a flesh robot with a mind inside it that can't do anything because everything is just moving automatically. But if that only happens if you try to mess with the math. But the thing is, how do we even know that somebody's tried to mess with the math? When you're talking to other people? So in the book, it's called, the name of the company is Sapere Aude, which is Latin for dare to know. It's called Sapere Aude syndrome. People don't even know who has it and who's not, who's a flesh robot and who's not, because not everybody knows who actually looked up their date and tried to mess with it or mess with somebody else's date. But people find out almost as an afterthought that free will is fake and predestination is gone. But the thing is, we have so many truths that are revealed to us by science that are so alienating that we have to ignore them. We have to ignore how vast the universe is, because otherwise we would go crazy. We have to ignore the weirdness of quantum mechanics and what's implied by it. Otherwise we'd go crazy.
So hang on. Let's chill there for a second, because what I was saying is that is that embracing determinism will drive us crazy. And
Uh-huh.
it sounds like you're saying kind of the opposite. Once you embrace randomness, once you embrace chance or choice, that's going to drive us crazy. Is that right?
Well, no, no. It's that once you realize that yeah, well, I guess in a way, once you realize what your fate is, and then you try to mess with it, that's when math
Mm.
shows you who the boss is.
Right.
And so I guess it's half one, half the other of what both of us are saying.
I see.
Like if you take that act of will after you know, that's what gets you.
Okay.
Yeah, but even like down to this, like there are creatures that are fornicating and excreting on our face all the time. If we really thought about that, like millions of them, and if we really thought about that all the time, it would drive us crazy. And so, like, we can't handle all the truth, and so we have to kind of construct a smaller truth around ourselves that it makes a universe that we can live in. Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you this: are there any stories that you've come across in whatever media format? Are there any stories that really make a hash of this? That you feel like, oh man, this I really hate the way it got handled here. Because
Ah,
it sounds like you've got a few that you like. I was curious if
yes.
there are any examples of, oh, here's how not to do it.
Um, I think
And I'm putting you on the
you're asking
spot
me to
there.
go negative, man. You're asking me to go negative. Like, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of bad time travel
Yeah.
stories, but like, I kind of forget them as soon as I read them. Like, I mean, sometimes, and when I said those four versions, I didn't say like, okay, all durable like time travel is bad. Like, for instance, the time travel in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of
Mm,
Azkaban is durable, but it's very satisfying. What isn't satisfying is that they just say, "Okay, we're going to put away the time turner."
right.
You know, like this. I guess. Okay, here's a chance for me to be negative. You have this force that could change everything, and the only person who has it is a student, so that can go to class, so that Hermione can take more
Right.
classes. Like this kind of universe, like destroying technology, and then they say, "Oh yeah, well, like okay, now we're going to put it away."
No, I think that's a very
Like it's
very popular critique, right, of
yeah,
those
yeah. So
books.
yeah, I'm not the first
No.
person to say that, but I guess, but I think that that is also the book in which she stopped being jokey and started being self-consciously epic. You know, like early on in these beloved like franchises, not franchises, like series, you'll have a moment in which like the author was not being so serious yet, and it's kind of feels a little bit fun and open. Like famously in The Hobbit, like they talk about, oh, at one point somebody orcs or goblins' head got knocked off and went into a hole. That's how the game of golf was
Right.
invented, right? And it's just like this silly one-off joke, and you would never read that in Fellowship of the Ring or anything like that. It's like a Hobbit joke, you know what I mean? Because he's just getting used to this universe, and he's just starting, so he's kind of approaching this jokey, approachable manner. Similarly, in the first couple of Harry Potter books, there are these kind of like things that are done like just for a laugh. And then it's like once you get to book 7, you're like, wait a second, if these things in earlier books were true, then like why weren't they using this later to confront these very serious problems? But I think if you were serious from the jump, it wouldn't be as good. You kind of have to ease it in with a kind of like a jokey way into these worlds. It kind of makes it more approachable. I like the golf joke in The Hobbit. It shows that he's human. It's kind of like when you're playing Zork and like there's like
Zork.
an electronic dam, but there's also an elvish sword of great antiquity. There's like a suburban house in the middle of a forest, but there's also a troll living underneath it. Like it's just a mishmash. And then like as those Zork games went on, they became more and more self-consciously a kind of fantasy thing that was its own enclosed universe. And then it became less fun. It was not kind of shaggy and open. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. All right. That makes a lot of sense. No, I like the.
That goes out to all 3 Zork fans in your
Oh,
audience.
please. I'm guessing we're gonna get a few Zork comments on Discord. Oh man, I love that game. Played it all the time. No, I definitely played Zork when I was a kid. Was it Raise the Bloody Knife or I don't know, something like that. Oh shoot, now you got me on Zork. I honestly forgot where I was with that. But okay, all right. So Are there any other directions we want to go with this? Maybe like words of caution to aspiring writers out there who are going to, possibly grapple with this topic. You already said if you're gonna include it, don't brush by it, right? Dive in. But any other words of advice?
I would say like the durable predestination. I think that story is played out. Like I think it worked in like durable with no irony. You know what I mean? Like it worked in Prisoner of Azkaban because it's a children's book.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like that feels very golden age Robert Heinlein kind of move, or like a Twilight Zone kind of thing, and it does not feel interesting anymore. I guess the way that you could do durable now is make it so complicated, like in that Shane Carruth film Primer. You know
I don't think I ever saw that one.
It's everybody on Discord is going to go crazy over this. It came out like I don't know, like about 12 years ago. The guy like made it for like $10,000, and then it won the Cannes Film Festival or something like that. And it's about like these. Like he wrote the script. He didn't have any money, so he did the music. Yeah. He starred in it. And you're looking it up now. Okay. And like it was made on, and then he did another movie called Upstream Color, which is even better. But that's like just like it's durable, but it's so complicated, and there's so many timelines that you can just like you can approach it like an engineer, and just like spend a lot of time puzzling over it. That's one way to do, I think, durable, like make it super complicated. Or like I guess Looper is a durable one, isn't it? But I think it's fun and it's actiony, and although it's so ludicrous, like so the whole reason that they time travel is to get rid of corpses. You know, like
it's this ridiculous.
There's a hit out on somebody. They send them back in time to get shot. That's it. That's it. For all the uses of time travel, that's
it's a bit like you're saying with Hermione. Like, oh yeah, so you can take an extra 3 classes. Congratulations.
Yeah. So you can kill a guy. I mean, the thing is like, but then it kind of. I guess here's a way to do durable: grant the premise and then use it for fun.
That's what I was going to say.
It doesn't really interrogate.
I was going to say the Back to the Future is, you don't look at it too close because the premise falls apart pretty quick. But why would you look at it that close? You're there to have some fun. Let's have some fun with it, right?
Yeah.
So,
let's put some cowboys in movie 3. Why not?
All right, cool.
I always wanted to make a Western. Okay, let's do it.
So, any final thoughts on
I would say that I think durable is the least interesting. Fragile is more interesting. Volitional, I think, is emotionally deep. Like I embrace this thing that is going to happen. And broken is a thing that I have not seen enough of, and I think is interesting. I think we live in a time now of collapsing systems. And I guess when we were talking about the Star Wars prequels, I mean that's all about like a non-functional administrative state that does not see the dangers that are right in front of it as it collapses. Right. I think we're kind of living that right now. And so anything about a collapsing system, which I guess Upstream Color is about too, like is interesting to me. I think those are the times that we're living in. And so and something, and there's something freeing about the idea of like, fate itself has been overthrown. I bet there's a lot of books and movies that that are not springing to mind that do this, and maybe it is more of a trope than I thought. But it's the one that I'm most attracted to.
When you say it that way, because of one character's choice, everything, the system falls apart. I think when you put it that way, yes, it sounds like a trope that you could point to any number of things on. But it's a little bit different when you're talking about the institution of predeterminism versus like a government.
Exactly. Not just fragility of a timeline. I mean fragility of the concept of predestination.
Right. Yeah.
Like a metaphysical concept is put into question. Right. And suddenly like people are freed or become more real, or that seems interesting to me.
I agree. All right. So all you kids out there listening, this is your new assignment, is to write a really good story using one of these 4 concepts of predeterminism. And I've got my insult for you now, James.
Okay.
This is how we're going to recap what you mentioned. Okay, if this were the beginning of the episode, I would say I'm your host, Craig Hanks, and with me, when I started this discussion, I was feeling volitional and durable, but now I am quite fragile and nigh into broken. James Kennedy, everybody. All right, so there you go. What was
Oh,
my
wow.
insult going to be?
Here it
Okay.
is.
Okay, I can't read it. Your screen's too blurry. You're going to have to read it for us. Nope. I hate that you were such a
Oh,
smartass that you thought you could read or predict my insult. Nice. That should have been the one. That I wish I had done that now. So I was trying to be too clever.
Yeah, but I was too much of a smartass.
So, okay, tell us a little bit more about your book then. So the book is Dare to Know. Now, you've told us a little bit about kind of the
Yes.
premise. Is there anything else you want to elevator pitch to us?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's it's about it's about this idea of like, knowing the exact time and date that you're going to die. And the reason I wrote it, and I kind of wanted to write it in this kind of like vein of like something like it's an emotional story, but but there's like a science fiction kind of a premise to it, like something like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind kind of thing, in which like or like Being John Malkovich or Arrival, like there's some kind of sci-fi thing happening, but it's really about is like the relationships between these characters, and although there's a lot of weird science in it, and so one of the reasons that I wrote it is kind of like, and I kind of said this elsewhere, but like the weird way that computers have been making me feel since about 2012. I grew up as programming computers. Like I had my trusty Atari 800. I would program video games, stuff like that. I was a software engineer for a while, and then I really loved the early internet, and then I started to hate it. And I stopped being a computer programmer, and I think it's around 2012 in which like the internet or computers in general for me stopped feeling like this kind of place of kind of like freedom or exploration or liberation. They started feeling this place where you're being surveilled, and there's propaganda coming at you, and there's advertisements coming at you, and it started to feel icky. And I thought, like, what if and so much information is being gathered about us all the time, and a lot of it is used in ways that we don't want. And I thought, what if like the most kind of intimate thing about you could be gathered, like the time and date that you die, and then that just becomes another banal data point. And like, kind of, what world would that be? And also, what kind of science would lead to that?
Or
and so
stem
I kind of
from
made
it.
up this kind of whole. Yes, exactly. And so I made up this kind of whole fake physics of thanatons, these death particles, and this kind of physics, or this kind of way of interacting with them called subjective mathematics, which is a kind of mathematics that only humans can do, not computers. And it kind of takes place in what is kind of like a Voight-Kampff test in Blade Runner, in which like you interview the person who wants to know what their death date is, and you have to do the calculations by hand, but you like say a nonsense phrase at them. They say the first thing that comes into their mind, and you have to look up that phrase in all these like analog books, and then say the next phrase, and through this whole interview, which just sounds like this weird nonsense poem, that's how the person comes to find what time and date that person is going to die. But the more you do subjective math, the more you can sense the math of others, in particular the math of computers, and just being around computers and feeling their math, feeling the way they calculate, starts to kind of drive you a little bit insane. Or just even being around a cell phone or using one. And I kind of wanted to get away through that, the kind of feeling that we're all, or at least I was, starting to feel with computers, that like it feels starting to feel icky now in a way that didn't, for almost all my life. And I wanted to get the kind of like the dark side of startup culture, like how I don't know, there is something about it's kind of like, we can save the world, we can change the world, kind of messianic, or like the Free Software Foundation, or like, hey, information wants to be free, like, hey, let's all share this cool stuff online. And now it does not feel that cool anymore. It feels kind of like monetized and surveilled, and I wanted to get across that icky feeling. But it's also about like the history of America before the Europeans came here. It's about like the rise and fall of civilizations. It's about haunted video games. It's about It's about satanic messages and top 40 music. It's about the one who you loved and lost earlier in your life, and who got away, and basically it's about like knowing when you're going to die, but it's also about coming to terms with the life that you've lived, and yeah, and so that's what it's about. That's my
so
pitch.
yeah, it sounds somewhat volitional, one might say. It's so
I think it's volitional and broken.
So is this a standalone book, or is this part of a series that you're doing?
Once you get to the end of the book, you realize there is no way it could go on.
You know what? That is so refreshing. And who's publishing it?
Quirk Books.
All right.
They're the ones. I think they published like The Last Policeman, and I think they might have, which is a book about like this guy. They're the ones who did like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Sure. I just need to. I need to write them a note and say thank you for publishing somebody in speculative fiction and not forcing it to be a series necessarily. So.
I mean, I'm writing 2 other books for them, but they're not in a series. And like for me, like the perfect kind of ending for something is, and I know a lot of people will say that's a terrible ending, but I love the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like here's something that goes from like the dawn of man to Jupiter and infinity. Like it goes from the beginning of humankind to the end of humankind, and I love the breadth of it. And I love how that's the thing. I love how it feels like it can't go any other place. And then of course 2010 comes out, and then 2061. Like Arthur C. Clarke just couldn't leave a good enough thing alone. And it reminds me of I was reading poor Douglas Adams.
Right. Hitchhiker's Guide.
He was talking about reading this book that was called The Lost Worlds of 2001, and it was kind of a conversation between. It was like Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick talking about like their vision for the movie, and throughout the whole thing, Arthur C. Clarke is saying, "Oh, Kubrick left this part out, and Kubrick left this part out," and Douglas Adams said, "You come away from the book with a great respect for Stanley Kubrick," so it didn't have to go on. 2010, 2061, whatever else were completely unnecessary. But like, I love the end of. Like, I love a mind-blowing ending. I love an ending that makes you sit in a mystery in which not everything is totally tied up, and you kind of. It's broken. You feel free. You feel like something is ended and a new thing has begun. We can't even imagine what that new thing is going to be. And that's my kind of ending.
On. Well, okay. So I got to ask you one final question when it comes to determinism. Okay. And that is, well, I guess it's a series of questions. The first one is, have you seen the 2009 Nick Cage movie called Knowing?
No, but I know about where it came from.
All right. So this sounds like it's a bit of a pet topic for you. So please go watch that movie and return and report. Let me know what you think of it.
Well, okay, I know because I do a podcast with my friend Matt Bird called The Secrets of Story, and this movie is a bugaboo of his because he's like a would-be scriptwriter, and he kind of like he keeps his eyes on the trades, and he's like, oh my god, what a perfect premise for a movie. Like there, like a bunch. You see, like I think the what do you call it? The pitch for it was like somebody sees like all these pictures that children had done of like various disasters, like 9/11.
It was a single sheet of paper with seemingly random numbers scrawled on it. Yeah.
Oh no, okay, but that's the thing. I know, but that's what it became.
Oh, I see.
The original pitch was there was he unearthed like a bunch of childish pictures from like before 9/11, all these various emergencies, in which the kids had pictures of all these emergencies happening, like childish pictures of the 2 towers coming down or whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did this come to be? And then trying to figure out how these kids knew it, and then somehow through development of this story, it came out to the least cinematic thing of like, well, what if we get rid of these kids' pictures and just have a bunch of numbers? What if we just do numbers, which nobody cares about, and is not cinematic.
So your buddy did not care for this movie.
No, did you see it and like it?
I love it. To this day, I love it.
Okay.
It's me and when he was still alive, Roger Ebert, basically holding down the fort. I came out of the theater and my brain's firing on all cylinders, and I can recognize there were some hokey parts of it. Like I'm not here to say it was a perfect movie or anything, but I really loved it. I got home and I'm looking up all the reviews online, and everybody hated it. And I'm like, wait, what? Like I get it's not perfect. You want to poke holes in it, totally fine. I get to Roger Ebert, he's like 4 stars. And he had for like 4 months, this giant mega thread on his website of people commenting. He's commenting and like going back and forth and getting into all these discussions of determinism and free will and all this stuff. And I love that movie. So
I live in Chicago, and here, it's Saint Roger Ebert.
Yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
loves him, and I love him too as a personality. But this guy was wrong all the time. He hated Blue Velvet. He hated he hated aliens.
That is weird. That's weird.
I think they had a split decision on Silence of the Lambs, and I think it might have been Siskel who said no, and he was thumbs up. He hated Lost Highway.
He was
this guy.
He and I were
no,
perfect. He wasn't perfect, but we were simpatico on Knowing, and also on the first 2 Harry Potter movies, the Chris Columbus movies being the best ones.
Yeah.
They are the best ones, and it's not even close.
You're a man of error. You're a man of profound error. You have many errors in your life, and you should reconsider all of the mistakes you have made in judgment. And now I'm wondering. I was going to
say, yeah. Do you regret that my judgment led to you being on this podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm starting to wonder what I'm doing here. I will say, okay, here is a great story about Ebert. This is why I will love Ebert forever. So Vincent Gallo, famous actor, famously did Buffalo 66, which is a great movie, but he also did a terrible movie called The Brown Bunny. And Ebert panned it. He said he hated the movie. Vincent Gallo comes back to him and just says, like, basically, you're fat. Right. Just like a fat joke at him. And Ebert famously came back and said, "It is true that I am fat, but one day I will be thin. But you will always be the director of The Brown Bunny."
That is a pretty good one. If I could write insults like him, no guest would ever come back to this show. I think that's safe to say. All right. Well, awesome. James Kennedy, thank you so much for doing this. These are the kinds of discussions that I really like, where we dig into one specific topic. For anybody who listens to the show, we do the wheel of tangents sometimes, and we kind of have to keep our discussions to 5 minutes so that we can spin the wheel again. And this, I actually often prefer this type of thing. Like, okay, let's do 30 minutes and deep dive on something. So appreciate you doing this, and hope to have you back at some point.
Great. I'll be back next week. Cool. I'll be back next week. Sure. I got all kinds of stuff to say.
Everybody needs to go check out Dare to Know. Published by, what was the name of the publishing house again? Quirk Books. Yeah, no, absolutely. Go check it out, please. I'm going to go grab one for my shelf over here. So go check it out. James, tell me your...
Can I do one more? Can I do one more pitch? More pitch. I also run a film festival for kids called the 90-Second Newbery Film Festival, in which kids make short movies that tell the entire stories of Newbery-winning books in about 90 seconds. So like Charlotte's Web or A Wrinkle in Time or whatever. You can find out everything you want to know at 90secondnewbery.com, 90newbery1r.com. And kids put weird twists on it. They'll do like Charlotte's Web, but in the style of a horror movie, or The Tale of Despereaux, but as a musical. It doesn't have to be only 90 seconds. It can be a couple minutes. But we screen this all over the country in like more than 10 cities, at least before COVID we did. And it's a lot of fun. If you have kids, or if you know kids who like to make movies, let them know about it. It's
okay, awesome. 90secondnewbery.com, is that what you said? Okay, yes. So check that out, and then give us your other websites again.
JamesKennedy.com. Where you can also learn about my first book.
Right, and what's your podcast?
The Secrets of Story with Matt Bird.
All right, Kennedy. Perfect. All right, James, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening. Please go to thelegendarium.com. It's just pitch central around here, so go to thelegendarium.com, Patreon, all that stuff. I'll end my pitches early. All right, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.